Well, 300, the graphic novel, is the departing point for us in terms of the look of the film. It's the rocks of Greece, it's the dirt of Greece, it's the Spartans sort of organically rising from the soil of Greece, and democracy sprouts in that same soil, and the way they use Greece itself to help defend Greece, the hot gates at Thermopylae. It's sort of the operatic treatment of the Battle of Thermopylae. And in that sense, we're not really married to historical truth, and we're not really married to realistic filmmaking conventions. We can take lots of liberties, both theatrically, dramatically, and stylistically. From the very beginning, almost everything was what you would traditionally call previs. Even though, I mean, that's sort of what art departments do. We paint conceptual paintings. We say, wouldn't it be neat if it looked like this? And then we build little models. But to shortcut all of that, almost all of the sets, everything was designed straight off in three-dimensional programs. Each scene was conceived with a fully designed and fully realized environment, which was designed in 3D and then rendered in terms of color with keyframe illustrations. And then we all went through all of these designs and these illustrations and said, how little do we have to build? What do we actually have to have for the actors? What kind of space can we have for the actors to move through that we can light and then marry to the backgrounds that we later lay in with the computer? The way we're doing it is that we're in a large industrial space, and we've created foreground terrains, largely, aside from the realistic sets of Sparta and of Xerxes' tent. The rest of it are abstract terrains. And the way that we arrived at these abstract terrains is to look at all the action as Zach worded it, and look at the relationship of the actors to each other. Are they going uphill? Are they going downhill? Are they going across rocks in rough terrain? Are they going through smooth terrain? And taking those terrains and abstracting them so that we have sort of multi-purpose terrains. Probably my favorite set was, it's odd, it was a sculpted rock, which we call the rabbit, only because when you looked at it in plan view, it looked a little bit like a rabbit. Zach gave it the nickname. But the thing that was really interesting about it was it represented, to me, a really interesting form of filmmaking. That one rock was used for about 8 or 9 different locations. And it was a multi-dimensional sculpture, really. If you shot from this angle, it matched Frank's profile in the way when Léonidas comes away from his dialogue with Ephialtes, and Ephialtes throws himself over the cliff. And then you shoot it from another angle, and it's where the Greeks meet, and it matches the profile of Frank's very graphic portrayal of what happens when the free Greeks meet the Spartans. Shoot it from another angle, and it's where the captain and Léonidas talk before they go off to meet the onrushing Persian hordes. Shoot it from another angle, and it's where the Spartans run through the woods and crawl up on the cliff ledge and look over the Persian encampment. It's like this multi-purpose area, and I just love the fact that this one little plop of cement was able to function for so many different sets. And the other thing that was terrific was, after it was designed and we plopped it down, Zach walked onto the set and instantly knew where all the shots were. And that, I thought, was just amazing. And he was really excited because he saw it. And it's so abstract that, like I said, not very many people could get that. And he did.
Approaching these designs, we really wanted to be as faithful to the comic book as possible. All the imagery is incredibly inspiring and unique, and so we wanted to make sure that that all gets on camera. What made this job so interesting for me, it was like creating these characters from head to toe. So there's so many elements of these complex costumes. There's footwear that we've been developing ourselves, jewelry, accessory, hats, armor, drapery. There's so many different pieces of the puzzle that go together to produce the final costume. A good way of delineating between the two armies would be to keep the Greek army in these rich, beautiful, warm earth tones, sort of beaten bronze and crimsons and brown leathers. And the Persian army, contrary to that, would be in the cooler, what we call the peacock sort of colours, the exotic greens and blues and purples with lots of flashes of beautiful, rich gold. We chose really rough linens and fabrics for the capes that would flow beautifully. We wanted to use thick leathers and beaten sort of bronze materials, hammered, distressed things that would capture the sense that Frank has of like things that have been lived in and that are very rugged and raw. We made sure that our silhouettes have a slightly exaggerated graphic quality to them. The folds of all the drapery of the capes were very carefully positioned. The flow of the fabric was controlled to try and get beautiful sweeps of fabric like are drawn in Frank's comic.
Obliteration! Just there, the barbarians huddle.
And as they engage more and more in battle, the capes get more shredded, the color of the fading rises from the hem, and by the end they're much shorter, they're all chopped up, there's holes all the way through them, and they're splattered with blood and dirt. We have a workshop here of about 60 people that all have their own specialties and they all come together to create these costumes. The patina team, or the painting and distressing team, take it from a raw metal and leather and they paint it with these beautiful painted finishes to make it look like it's gone through heavy warfare. This is where we're assembling Leonidas' helmet. We're going to have 17 of them eventually to cover the different stages of deterioration. And we've developed a way of doing the crest which involves layers of feather and horsehair, which gives it a great sort of texture that the camera loves and makes it a little bit more unusual and more Frank Miller-esque. It has this great graphic quality that looks incredible on Jerry.
Damon and I met Damon through Kurt, and again, like about 8 years ago, and Damon used to train me, and I always knew he was like doing movies, and I mean, it's just amazing that it's worked out that now it's like he's like putting these fights together, and he's in charge of it, and it's just really cool because he's just awesome at what he does. I mean, he's a full instructor at the Indosano Academy. He's like all the disciplines he knows, Kali and JKD, anything you can think of, he's fucking a master of it.
Historically, there's really nothing that classifies or there's no record of the actual tactics that they use or the techniques. So what we did was looked at a lot of the fighting methods that we've trained in over the years, the weapon-based systems specifically, which are the heavy Filipino influence, Thai, Indonesian, Japanese, Chinese, even European.
Pull out, roll, ready to go, good.
We kind of had a look we wanted to do, how we wanted to do the two-man, kind of watching each other's back and how Spartans fight as a unit together. We kind of took that idea and kind of just grabbed some things we liked from Kali, from our Eskrima, from our Nice, from kickbox, from the other martial arts we know, and then kind of made some stuff up from there.
Live blade techniques that have been performed over the years through a lot of the people we've trained with, who've actually fought live blade versus live blade, or spear or sword, and all these things throughout Southeast Asia. A lot of the arts we pulled from. Just tried to make a interesting blend with a combative base.
And we just kind of kept going back and forth between what he thought it was, what the comic book, what we think the comic book would have looked like if it was, if it came to life. With the amount of battle scenes we have, I mean, Zach's one of those guys that leads from the front. So if he runs out of energy, we run out of energy. When you're doing battle scenes every day, running up and down the set, fighting every minute of the day, it helps to have a director that's very, very energetic about that.
His physicality is it's priceless because he really understands what is possible, what's impossible, how long it takes to do certain action.
It's very handy to have a director that understands action from a performer's point of view.
It's priceless to have that connection with the director.
Everybody learned together, improved, and got the style, and we became one, as we say, single, impenetrable unit. And I think that the action in this is going to be mind-blowing, and that came from Chad and Damon. It put me through so much, but gave me so much.
He was talking about, well, I want to stop doing this, and I want to get on a routine for this, and he was just an all or nothing. He said, you know, as long as I get on this routine, you tell me what I need to do for the weapons training, or, you know, myself and Chad, or whatever regiment we put him on, he's focused, and he's been great.
We had 6 weeks with the actors before we started principal photography. They lifted, they fought, they trained, they swung the swords, all as one. I mean, it wasn't a special training for the actors and for our guys and for the Canadian stunt guys. Everyone trained together. When you see some of the shots that Zach did, they're uncut. It's 45-second steady cam shots with a lot of them. I mean, the training paid off. I mean, they fight as a team. They train as a team.
300 is a story of honor and fearlessness and passion and blood. Faith, ultimately. Gorgo is the wife of Léonidas, Queen of Sparta, and they begin together, and then the boys have to leave because they all believe that they're doing the right thing for freedom.
Lena's great. Lena she's a northern girl. She's from the north of England, so she's tough and she's down to earth, and she's wily, she's fun, she's strong, and that's exactly what Gorgo is. And she's beautiful, and you know, when she's made up as Gorgo, then I mean, it was breathtaking just to look at her.
She's left to kind of deal with everything back in Sparta.
While her husband promotes anarchy and war.
She goes through a bit of a journey herself. I love kind of physical stuff, like my heart was going, and I was like, it felt so good, you know, because, you know, all these movies, the guys get to fight and wield swords and kill each other and get all bloody. So it was my one moment of like Boise-ness. So I kind of relished that moment. Well, I've known Dominic for a while, so that kind of makes it easier. And also he's insane, so it's kind of fun. They're good scenes to have with somebody. You don't want to sit around drinking tea, you know what I mean? They're kind of loaded, every scene that they have together. Because at first you're like, holy God, and they've all worked out for like 6 months. They look amazing, you know what I mean? They're walking around in pants, leather pants. But now it's just like, hi, you know what I mean? I don't even bat an eyelid. Surrounded by flesh.
The process of doing this has been, you know, Frank's book, 300, is a beautiful book. It's a graphic novel. It's a piece of beautiful art.
Just picture a train wreck, because that's what the battle was like. It was hideous. If there is a single most important element in comics, it is the drawings. And it was very important to streamline the appearance of the characters.
Frank's work is it is very Spartan-esque in its aesthetic. And visually, the book is stunning and strong.
You have Sparta as a country, or a city-state, you know, Greek city-state. And here comes this invasion from the north, 1 million men.
They were basically saying, hey, you know, this is my scrap of land, this is my wife, this is my town. I'm gonna fight for this because it's worth it.
There's a long and worthy history of stylized violence. And there was no way to tell the story of 300 without it being amazingly ridiculous.
For hundreds and hundreds of years, they were one of the paramount of the warrior culture at that time.
Zach really wanted to make this movie, and no doubt many others were just dedicated to it. I met Zach, and he's kind of irresistible. He's really charming.
everybody knows has the one friend who's the great storyteller. For me, that's Zach.
Everybody's killing themselves in this thing to make it as accurate as possible, but accurate not in the sense of historical accuracy. They picked up on the stylization I brought to the drawing of it. So these Spartans are much more physical in their appearance than the real Spartans were.
He was more concerned, obviously, presenting history in the correct light. But what he didn't want to do, and what he was very clear to Warner Brothers, is that he wanted to make a graphic novel version and Frank Miller's version of this battle.
Frank, in his book, faces the same problems that we face when we make a movie. It's a graphic frame, right? It's a picture. You know, like, how do you know who the characters are? What about them is distinctive? What about this frame tells me that there's a million guys? What about this frame tells me that there's threat? What about this frame tells me that it's night?
You're able to distill human emotion into physical action. So people aren't standing around giving speeches. Well, a couple speeches.
How do I take that story and tell it in a moment-to-moment way?
I would read a scene, and he would get very excited, and then he would read me something he wrote, and then I was like, oh, you know, he just raised the bar. So then I would have to like try to. There's kind of this lovely competitive creativity that was going on.
Yeah, I saw a lot of the drawings and how much of it was based on the book. I saw some of the models they've done for the characters.
I go, look, the way Frank solved that problem was by doing this to the sky. The way Frank solved that problem was by doing this to the terrain. You know, we need to learn a lesson from that. And that's kind of how we've been sort of gone about trying to take that design in that world and put it, make it real, make it into this world.
He has the ability as a storyteller to trust his instinct and to believe that there really are no obstacles.
And so that's what the script was. When I wrote the script, I just tried to get the book into script form.
Remember this day, men, for it will be yours for all time!
You know, you see the cover and you just see these guys marching and you think, oh wow, what is this? Essentially, it's a story of 300 Spartans. The king takes his elite force to save his nation, to fight, they say, the most massive army ever assembled. Our film, first of all, sets up what a Spartan is, and it's very extreme what they went through. And you see there were no soldiers ever like these guys in the training, the endurance and the toughness, and they have to go and do what is their dream essentially, which is to die in the perfect battle. The king, who basically has to deal with, he wants to take a larger army there, but he has to deal with outdated traditions and corruption within the council and the ephors, who I guess are like their Supreme Court. He realizes it's a decision he has to make on his own, and he has to take his best men and go and make a stand. It's not a documentary, it is a kick-ass story full of passion and politics and brutality and so many more things, existing in this kind of hyper-real, beautiful, emotional world. My look as the king is bigger than anybody else's, I have this big, he's a big persona, with the braid round the head and the big beard, and I wanted to fit that body-wise. I wanted to be an example to the other actors and to the stunt guys that, I wasn't just some guy coming in and playing the king, but I was there in every way and was going to work as hard, if not harder than any of them, to prove myself as the king, as a Spartan. I started 3 months before we even came to Montreal, and then trained for another 4 or 5 weeks here before the film even started. And at some points I was training 4 hours a day in the gym. I had 2 trainers, 2 separate trainers. I don't know what I was thinking. They have trained their whole lives. There's nothing they wanted more than to be Spartans. That's taken for granted, that's understood. I'm taking my best men. I know these guys are there with me my problem is holding them back. They're like hungry lions just waiting to go. There's certain times I need to give them a pep talk, but it's short and sweet. There's no flowery language used in Sparta. What is required to motivate your men, to understand what pushes your men and their souls and what drives them and the difference that can make in being an effective force in battle. It's a great line in the movie when Xerxes says, "How can you ever stand against me when I would gladly kill any one of my men for victory?" And I say, "And I would die for any one of mine." And that, to me, is the essence of Léonidas, that he would die for any one of his men. If you're not going to go away, then let's fight. And let's fight in the best way we can. We're going to kill everybody we can. We're going to, we're going to take all the bodies, we're going to build mountains out of them, we're going to kill your messengers, that's what we're going to do. And we do it in a very brutal, ferocious way, and we love it. I often feel that we were killing them, we'd be quite happy to drink their blood, and so that's me though. I think it's a little crazy as well. I wanted to put a touch of madness in there. There's times when you just, I can't imagine people in other nations saying, "That Leo, he's a crazy dude, that guy, you don't want to mess with him, And at times I wanted to see a touch of that, where he's just like, the intensity is almost unbearable.
Xerxes has convinced himself he's a god, so he puts himself like in a pedestal, like, above the sky. I did a good research of Persian history on Herodotus. There was, a lot of interesting informations there that I used to build Xerxes. The soul, the essence of the character, it's just right there. He existed once. It's actually a huge responsibility to play this guy. Well, man, the costumes and the sets are just incredible. I'm not gonna lie to you, when I first saw the costume, I said, wow, I've never seen so much gold. It helped me a lot because it makes you feel like, all over full of gold, and had the piercings and everything. Just, I miss it now. Yeah, it's part of him. The gold is part of him. And I had to come down those stairs, carrying myself as a king. So it was quite a trip. He totally believes he's like a living legend. So he doesn't even look at Léonidas as a, equal at all. He looks at Léonidas as a interesting creature. Why he's so powerful? Where does it come from? 3,000 tons of gold? That would make a difference, but he's just, he has a strong personality. He's like a spoiled kid. He's rich, he's arrogant, he's very unstable, megalomaniac, just wants to conquer the world. His ambition is unlimited. He wants glory, he wants victory, he wants eternal fame. He just, he just wants.
Kill him!
I'm interested in training guys that lay their fitness on the line. We put them under a lot of stress, both muscular and metabolic. I've seen people in tears, I've seen people vomit.
So if you're not nervous before you train, think about it. That might be not hard enough.
Passing through that sort of nervousness, getting into the workout, having it be as hard as you thought it was going to be, maybe even a bit harder, coming out the other side and realizing, I made it. Well, we're combining two different modes of exercise, and using the sprint starts to try and drive all the blood to the legs and get his heart rate and respiration up really high. At that point, go over to the rings, which demand a really high level of core tension, so you can't breathe as well as you want to, and because all the blood is in the legs, There's not much to push with in the upper part of the body. They basically never did the same workout twice. By making it random like that, the body never adapts to one thing.
Go to right.
And that's the circular path that we're taking to prepare these guys for the roles that they're playing and also all the fighting that they have to do. We're blending basically 3 different types of activities, combining gymnastic, metabolic, and lifting or throwing. Some of the guys needed to lose weight, some of the guys needed to put some weight on, some of the people just needed to be recomposed in a sense.
That's right. No pain, no gain, no wax.
We always use a stopwatch to intensify the movements, and it's also a way to create a hierarchy within the group.
They're pushing you to the limit.
They come in looking a little bit soft, they get smashed. They come into the gym and they're, they look smooth. Veins that were popping out before are not popping out now. They get smashed.
Give thanks, men! 10 Leonidas and the brave 300 to victory!
They were the first professional warriors in history, the Spartans. They were bred to fight. They were trained to fight.
Spartan society was extremely violent. Basically, one Spartan decided to turn the whole of the city-state into a nation of almost like automaton soldiers. When they were training these young soldiers, they would go over the mountains to another city-state to murder someone from another city as part of their training.
They were completely a battle culture because they were absolutely dedicated to warfare. But at the same time, they had an absolute code of honor on what it meant to be a Spartan. Out of this arose this heroic class that the world had never seen before. Those were the Spartans.
It was a very extreme society. And what I love is they don't make excuses for that. They say, this is the way they were. And it was hard and it was tough and they were shown nothing but pain their whole lives. To teach them endurance, to teach them to go through pain, to teach them fearlessness, and to teach them no mercy against their opponents.
And the greatest honor in Spartan society was to actually die on the battlefield for Sparta. They fight as one, and that's what they were famous for as well. They didn't fight as individuals, they fought as a unit.
The comradeship and respect and loyalty that these men had for each other, which is also explained through the action, that they didn't fight for themselves, they fought for the man next to them, they protected the man next to them. So your life was in their hands and their life was in your hands on a daily basis. That's how they trained. They were forced to coexist together and to bond like that. All based on a true story. So it's an incredible story which has been an inspiration to so many people throughout history.
Essentially, they were a warrior race who managed to defend a very fertile piece of land for a great deal of time, which meant that they were obviously tough, tough nuts.
This is Sparta!
I think of any movie I've done, this has the highest number of difficult shots. In terms of the visual effects elements that we shot 8,631 visual effects elements. It's my record.
Let me guess. You must be Xerxès.
The trick of this scene really is a huge height differential. Xerxès is supposed to be 7.5 feet tall. It's played by Rodrigo Santoro. But in actuality, Rodrigo and Jerry Butler are exactly the same height. So we had to figure out a way to make these two characters a drastically different size, but keep the quality of their interaction natural and convincing and not draw the viewer out of the movie.
Frank's book shows that Xerxes is almost 1.5 heads taller than Leonidas. So we did a test of that. And so the 10-foot version of Xerxes was outrageous. He just looked like a giant. He just looks huge.
So we made him 8 feet tall, and that still looked a little big. So we went to 7 feet. He looked a little small at 7 feet, so we settled on 7.5.
We totally had to come down to 7.5 feet from 10 feet because of ridiculousness of 10 feet. 7.5 feet tall for two actors that are the exact same size. It just shows how over the top Xerxes is too. Everything about him is over the top, so the scale is also.
Let us reason together.
Some of the work we did just in camera. You know, since a camera only has one eye, it's limited in its ability to tell the difference between a big object far away and a small object close up. Leonidas was shot with one camera, and Xerxes was shot with another camera. The camera that shot Xerxes was using the same perspective that it would have been shot normally, it was just a little bit closer.
When they were acting, Rodrigo had this teeny little Jerry that he had his hands on, a little Jerry head that was stuck on the thing.
Jerry Butler, on the other hand, had to look over the top of Rodrigo's head because he was looking at something that was supposed to be taller than Rodrigo really was.
We would put a laser sometimes on the green screen, way back. And so those were the two tricks we kind of used to scale them. With the Wall of the Dead, if you look at Frank's drawing, it's almost like the bodies are like cresting like a wave, washing down on it. And that was really, I think, the thing that was the biggest challenge.
The challenge was to start the wall off as a big, vertical, intimidating element. So we started off doing a little bit of previs just to kind of get an idea of what Zach wanted to see in the movie.
Chris and I talked about it a lot, about what the aesthetic of the fall would be. And we decided we really need to see him get hit by a body, to see him, you know, fall down. We couldn't reset and do it a bunch of times because it took a long time to carry the bodies and put them up and then dump them down. So Chris came up with this idea of shooting the same drop with 3 cameras to allow us to get all 3 plates at once. And also to have continuity between the fall because it actually gave us the foreground, the midground, and the background all in one take. That worked out really cool.
My company's Creature Effects, and that's really my expertise is creating creatures for film, and that's animals and monsters. I mean, all these characters come from historic backgrounds, and so for us to see the reality between the fantasy, we felt that there was a whole page of color that we could bring to it, and also, you know, a drama that maybe wasn't necessarily there to begin with.
I want a uniform.
The Hunchback is a unique and a wonderful piece that we look forward to make from the very beginning. Ever since we saw the comic book and saw this wonderful character that Frank Miller had developed, we wanted to do that piece.
Yeah, the Hunchback was a very difficult makeup. We're trying to be true to the comic book as much as we can. A maquette is a miniature sculpture, usually 6 scale or maybe a little bit smaller, of the final design of the character that you're doing. Any one time we would have maybe 8 people working on that particular character. So we had people working on teeth, we had people working on eyeballs, we had people making molds, people doing life casts. We actually flew the actor in from England, did a cast and flew him up the next day. And then we had to fly him back twice for fittings before we got up here to actually shoot.
I will kill many fathers.
I really like the Giant. The Giant was really one of my favorite characters, just because he went through a complete evolution. We're going to cast a big bodybuilder, but we couldn't find anybody of that sort of stature. And the design, we did several designs based upon a bodybuilder. And when they finally cast Robert's 7'1", he's a wrestler, but his body wasn't built like a bodybuilder. He was built more like an old-time boxer. So when I saw him and we all looked at him, and I didn't feel the design really worked with him. And we talked to Zach and Debbie about possibly changing the look of this character, like really a week and a half before we had to shoot him. I said, you know, why don't we make him more like he's an abused dog, kind of beaten up and like an old-time boxer? And they loved it. And Zach said, yeah, sure. And so we had CJ sculpt it, and CJ literally had to sculpt this particular makeup in between doing all this other stuff on set. So when he wasn't on set, he would run back and sculpt this makeup, and we put this whole thing together like in a week and a half with the guys here on set, and I thought it turned out amazing. So.
We worked with Zach for months before this film was even greenlit. And it's been great. It's been a great collaborative effort. We feel like we've helped him along the way to develop this film.